Yes. Correct.
Didn't realize you were both.
And we live right at the edge of the Stags.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Yountville Town Council. It is Tuesday, what day is it? May 4th at 6 p.m. For those of you joining us for the very first time in council chambers this evening, you'll find the agenda and supporting documentation, staff reports, that sort of thing on the wall in the little plastic bins by the door where you came in. Help yourself to that information. We are being broadcast live on Channel 28, and this session will be rebroadcast on Friday at noon. And we're also web streaming live. If you visit our website, townofyountville.com, click on a bunch of buttons, you'll eventually find this session. Also, we would ask that while you're in council chambers this evening, you leave off your cell phones and pagers so we can get through the meeting uninterrupted. May we have the roll, please?
Councilmember Dutton.
Here.
Councilmember Chilton.
Here.
Councilmember Mueller.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Mayor Sossaman.
Here. At this time, I would like to invite Sergeant Malat to join us in the, or lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sergeant. Item 4, closed session report. There was a closed session on April 20th. No closed session was held on April 20th, so there's no report.
That's correct.
Item 5, adoption of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda this evening?
Motion for approval.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries. Item 6 is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any matter that's not on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir. Yes, please. Come up to the podium and state your name for the record.
It's on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyway, I live on Landy Way, and I'm on the corner of State Street and Landy, and it's become a bigger traffic hazard with the subdivisions that I helped install with the O'Brien Group, and there's a real bad turn right there. It's a pretty blind turn. Coming from Staggs View onto Landy or from Landy onto Staggs View. And especially if a car happens to be parked on either side of the street, people are veering out into the middle. I've had one car, retired judge, up in my front yard. He was distracted and missed the turn and smashed into a tree in the front yard. Just this weekend, I lost a pet, a cat that's been with us longer than my son's been with us. And I really don't want to lose my son playing out in the street or on the sidewalk out there either. I'm not sure how to go about getting something done to that turn as far as signage, speed bump, traffic enforcement. Well, it's speed because it's a 90-degree turn and it does come up fairly quickly, and people can pick up speed coming down Staggs View. And I know, building some of the subdivisions in town, we've got some stop signs that, could have been, I think, better used. I'm not asking for a stop sign, but something out there to get people to slow down.
If I could, with the council, what I'd like to suggest is that Public Works Director can get Mr. Botterini's contact information, and we'll bring this item back to our traffic advisory review. There will be a mid-block island installed on Staggs View as part of the construction of Vineyard Oak to help, but I think the more immediate is if we can, we'll bring this item to the Transportation Advisory Committee and have them work on some ways to try to improve the situation.
That'd be great, especially we do have another subdivision hopefully starting in the near future down there. It's going to bring even more traffic through there. I appreciate whatever can be done.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else, public comment? Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll close that portion of the agenda and move on to the consent calendar. Item 7, are there any changes or corrections to tonight's consent calendar?
Motion for approval.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries. Presentations. We have a proclamation. Is Mr. Penning here?
Yes, that's me.
I have a proclamation for you declaring May 2010 Bike to Work Month and May 13, 2010 as Bike to Work Day. Whereas Thursday, May 13th, 2010 is Bike to Work Day throughout California, and whereas the town of Yountville supports encouraging citizens to ride their bikes to work, school, and other trips, and whereas bicycle commuting benefits both employees and employers through better employee health and fitness, reduced commuting, parking, and health care costs, and whereas bicycle transportation is an integral part of the multimodal transportation system planned for by federal, state, regional, and local government agencies, and whereas May is National Bike to Work Month to promote the bicycle as a viable means of transportation and recreation, now therefore be it resolved that I, Cynthia Saucerman, Mayor, on behalf of the Yountville Town Council, do hereby proclaim May 2010 as National Bike to Work Month and May 13th, 2010 as Bike to Work Day.
All right, thank you very much. And I think that Yountville has been doing a great job accommodating cyclists. As you well know, the Napa Valley is a destination for cyclists from all across the country. Almost every cyclist that we see in other parts of the country know all about the Napa Valley and can tell us all about the roads, just like the wineries. And I think Yountville is doing a great job of accommodating the cyclists who come visit us. Thank you very much. This will help raise awareness of cyclists in the community. And again, the thanks for the Napa County Bicycle Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, Parks and Recreation Department quarterly update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to present to you this evening the mid-year report for the Parks and Recreation Department. The last 6 months has been a very exciting time in Parks and Recreation, highlighted by the grand opening of our beautiful new community center, by significant growth in the new programs we've offered to the community and the revenue generated by those programs, as well as by programs we've targeted to eliminate the obesity epidemic among children and adults alike, and by offering fitness programs like Zumba, cardio sculpting, and Healthy Me. I like to think of us as the healthy and energizing alternative to caffeine and energy drinks, and the affordable alternative to expensive private health clubs. Now, Lisa Tyler is going to give you an update on community center activities over the last 4 months, as well as a sneak preview at our summer aquatics program. And then Lisa's also going to pinch hit for Jennifer Carvalho, who couldn't be here tonight, and also talk to you about our recreation programs and special events.
A ribbon-cutting ceremony was held in November to acknowledge the many people and organizations that help make the community center a reality. In December, a grand opening gala, annual tree lighting ceremony, and Chamber of Commerce mixer was held throughout the community center. Santa lit the new tree that was graciously donated by Vice Mayor Dunbar and his family. Food and refreshments were donated by local caterers, service clubs, and restaurants, and many holiday festivities entertained the large crowd. The community center has hosted a variety of events such as fundraisers, receptions, luncheons, dinners, meetings, and quinceañeras. 69 events have occurred at the center to date. 75 tours have been provided to many interested organizations and individuals. Marketing information went out to past renters, was placed in local telephone directories, the Napa Valley Marketplace, Yountville Sun, Napa and Yountville Chamber of Commerce, and specific wedding publications. An increased fee schedule was adopted by council. Feedback and revenue indicate our fees are reasonable, market-driven, and within the budgets of renters. Rental revenues during the first quarter are approximately $40,000 as compared to an average $35,000 per year. A conservative estimate of annual revenue is estimated at $150,000. Many organizations such as World Vision Foundation, Taste for Literacy, the Napa Valley Library, Napa Valley Grape Growers, Napa Valley Vintners, UC Master Gardeners, and many more have used the community center recently. The art gallery at the community center has displayed artwork of well-known local artists, and the art committee has hosted 2 receptions with 2 more scheduled. The community center is off to a great start with higher customer satisfaction, excellent usage rates, and exceptional revenue generation. Quickly diving into the 2010 pool schedule, the pool will open on Saturday, June 12th from 10 to 4. The pool will be open 6 days a week and be closed on Mondays. We will again offer family passes and our newly designed couples pass that can be used for the community center's community swim. 4 swim lesson sessions will be offered this summer, with the first beginning June 15th through 25th. Swim lesson fees will increase slightly, with resident rates to be $40 and non-resident rates $46 for 8 30-minute sessions. Lessons will run from 4 to 6:50 p.m. Tuesday through Friday. The activity pool will be open for toddler time on Wednesday and Fridays from 4 to 6:50 p.m. during swim lessons. This will allow for parents with very young children a place to cool off while their siblings take lessons. I will now go into the recreational programming. Since January, the center has had 45 new programs and classes. A variety of classes such as Zumba, Silver Sneakers for Seniors, karate, meditation, youth basketball league, team programs, yoga, and many art classes in partnership with Nimbus Arts from St. Helena have been offered. All of these are targeted towards improving health and fitness. In addition, these classes relieve stress and create opportunities to meet others in the community. We believe in educating the community on the importance of healthy eating and regular physical exercise to help combat adult and childhood obesity. Our open gym program is going well, with as many as 28 people attending per session on Monday, Tuesday, and Saturdays. Our youth basketball league had 4 teams and ran for 8 weeks for a total of 32 Yountville children participating. And our leisure classes have had a total of 162 participants in some of the classes I mentioned prior. The Youth Mini Sports League, Little Kickers soccer program, and Little Hoopsters basketball program, which are co-sponsored by the Kiwanis Club, are geared towards preschool age and early grade level children, teaching them the basic fundamentals of sport, developing sportsmanship, team concepts, and engaging in a healthy lifestyle. 25 Yountville children participated in this program. Creating Community Excursions had 13 family-oriented excursions to a variety of places such as Family Snow Play Day, professional sporting events, theater, educational, and amusement activities. 250 residents participated in these excursions. The annual Breakfast with the Bunny and Egg Hunt featured our traditional real boiled eggs and plastic eggs and special prizes for those who found the golden eggs. Over 2,600 eggs, real and plastic, were hidden this year. This year, the hunt attracted approximately 220 participants. Now, John will speak about the before and after school programs.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, again, I'm pinch hitting now for Cal Rasmussen, our recreation coordinator, who's in charge of before and after school program and our camps. She also could not be with us this evening. We kicked off our Healthy Me initiative on January 1st, 2010. Again, this initiative is designed to combat childhood obesity, and it's designed to do that in a number of ways. First, by teaching children and their families about the importance of healthy eating and nutrition, by teaching children and their families about the importance of regular physical exercise. We introduce healthy snacks into our program for the first time, including fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. And here's a nice picture of our kids enjoying some apples and a banana. They've actually begun to ask for seconds sometimes on the healthy snacks, believe it or not. So we're making progress. We're also providing our kids with 30 minutes of physical activity every day. You may have seen some of our kids and the staff walking around town to get their exercise. This program hasn't only benefited our youth, but our staff as well. And Carol told me it was okay to tell you that since she started participating in Healthy Me January 1st, she's lost 30 pounds. So she's doing great, and so are our kids. So we're seeing some really good results from this Healthy Me initiative. Here's a testimonial from Sue Hall, a third grade teacher at Yountville Elementary School where we conduct our program. She said, living a healthy lifestyle does make a difference in a child's education. And since the Healthy Me program started in January, my students that are in the after-school program are getting homework completed on time and with less errors. And we're finding that after the kids go out and have 30 minutes of physical activity, they're able to come back into the program, be more focused on their homework and their attention to their homework. Our teen program is an after-school program on Tuesday for 4th and 5th grade students, and they've been working on a very special project recently with the veterans from the Veterans Home called the Spirit of 45, which commemorates the end of World War II. Now, in this program, 2 World War II veterans actually came to our program site to teach our kids about the war, how important history is, and about what veterans have done for our country. And they were actually very impressed with how much our kids already knew about the war. Our kids made posters for the celebration party at the Veterans Home, which are shown in the slide here, and these posters were hung up at the party that our kids also attended up at the Veterans Home. So not only was this a great learning experience for our youngsters, but it was a great intergenerational program and experience by matching our 4th and 5th graders with veterans. And I'm pleased to inform you that we've had an overall increase in revenue from our before and after school programs this year compared to last year. Now, in terms of our camps, we ran a 3-week winter camp and a 1-week spring camp. These camps were highlighted by field trips, special events, arts projects, and visit to the community center for a variety of activities which kids really love. Again, there's been an increase in participation and revenue generated in our winter and spring camps this year compared to last year, so that's very good. We're now planning our summer camp, and the theme this year is Up in the Air. And we're going to be teaching our kids about airplanes, kites, hot air balloons, birds, and everything that we can look up to. And we have a variety of exciting activities and excursions planned to underscore that theme. On October 31st, we held our annual Halloween festival at Yountville Elementary School. We had 200 participants in costume, enjoying lots of games and activities, winning a lot of prizes. Next year, we're looking forward to bringing this program back to our community center and reestablishing our haunted house. It's been a very busy 6 months for our parks. In January, we had a dedication of the new playground equipment in Yountville Park. It was a beautiful day. Here's some pictures from that event. We had about 60 kids show up to christen the new playground equipment. This new playground is the result of kids voting for their preferred equipment, the council's action to enhance the budget so that all of the equipment could be purchased at one time and now rather than later, thereby saving money in the long run, and by moving some equipment here from Vineyard Park. And again, the kids absolutely love the new equipment. It's being very, very heavily used. For about the past 3 months, the Parks and Community Services Commission has led a discussion with the community about whether or not a dog park is needed in Yountville, and if so, where the best location would be. There's been a tour of the potential sites by the commission and the public. There's also been 3 opportunities for the public to comment before Parks and Community Services Commission meetings. And this issue has generated a lot of letters and emails and a lot of passion on both sides of the issue, as the council well knows. At its last meeting, the commission adopted criteria to guide their recommendations about the dog park. And when they applied that criteria to the potential sites, they eliminated all but 2 of those sites from consideration, with the 2 remaining sites being Veterans Park and the undeveloped area south of Veterans Park. Now, we'll be bringing a status report to the council on May 18th about the dog park, and we'll be seeking direction from the council about our next steps. We've also been busy with a lot of other activities. We've made some administrative improvements, such as revising our application forms and guidelines for special events, amplified sound, and block parties. We've received approval from the council on application processing fees to recover town costs. We've provided training for our new Parks and Community Services Commission. We've conducted a park and recreation fee survey of surrounding jurisdictions to make sure that our fees are at appropriate levels. And we've revised our program registration procedures to improve customer service. Now, back in December, when the community center first opened, we heard some flack about the fee we charge for our open gym program. The fee was necessary because we had no budget, we wanted to provide the service to the community, and we had to find a way to cover our staff supervision costs. So we instituted a fairly nominal fee. It's interesting to note that since that time, the flack about the fee has virtually disappeared, and we're averaging about 21 to 28 people per open gym session, which is very good. However, we did learn from that we really aren't doing as good a job as we should be in informing the public about all of our free and greatly discounted programs that we offer. So we're trying to do a better job of publicizing that more and letting the community know that, yes, we do have some fee-based programs, but we also have a lot of programs that we offer for free or at greatly discounted rates. Some of those include community center rentals for residents, which are discounted by 46% compared to non-resident rates. Park reservations for residents are free. Our team after-school program is free. We have a youth subsidy fund to help low-income folks pay the fees in our programs. Our special events are free. The community center can be used for free by our local nonprofits. These are just a few of our free and greatly discounted programs. So we want to do a better job of letting the public know about those. Now, as part of our budget submittal, we've recommended that certain programs be offered completely free while others be required to recover all or most of their costs. I think there needs to be a reasonable balance of both. We don't want people to feel nickeled and dimed on our low-cost programs, but by the same token, we also need to recover a certain percentage of our costs. So we'll be looking forward to having that discussion with the council on May 18th. As always, we continue to forge partnerships wherever possible to enhance our service offerings to the community and leverage scarce resources. In the last 6 months, we forged partnerships with Nimbus Arts from St. Helena, the St. Helena Parks and Rec Department and Boys and Girls Club, the Kiwanis Club, the Chamber of Commerce, Napa City County Library, and the Tug McGraw Foundation and Veterans Home on a brain garden and underscoring the importance of healthy eating. We've also had the community step up and support the community center in a big way. We've had some very generous contributions to the community center from John Dunbar and his family, Bill Dutton and his family, Steve Rogers, Kiwanis, Focus, Lori Altamira, Jones, and Joe and Lori Bauer. We've reached out to the community, and they're responding very generously, and we're going to continue to partner with the community for community center enhancements. Now, since December, we've also conducted 2 community-wide surveys to determine the community's priorities and preferences for parks and recreation services. The results of those surveys are in your packet. We're gearing our programs now to the residents' preferences that were expressed in those surveys. And I think that's a great starting point for what I think is really needed, and that's a Park and Recreation Department strategic plan to identify priority services for the next 5 years and how resources will be allocated to support those priorities. Finally, a new permanent Parks and Recreation Director will be hired soon. I think this person is going to be coming on board at a very exciting time. We've just opened our beautiful new community center. We've got lots of new programs with lots of participation and revenue going. We've got a superb and committed staff, a very supportive town council, Parks and Community Services Commission, and town manager. I really believe the department is poised to take off and take its quality services to the next level. And I believe the department's future looks very bright indeed. So it's an exciting time. It's been an exciting 6 months, and the future looks very rosy. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and ask the council if they have any questions.
Thank you, John. Does council have any questions for staff?
Comment?
Question?
Question.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, two things. One question and one statement. First of all, regarding the use fees, I appreciate the responsiveness, because I think all of us probably heard some of the feedback. There was a little bit of a shock of, you know, what do you mean it's not totally free all the time for all things? And I think as we've educated, like you said, people understand that some of the cost recovery is really an important part of making this thing successful and take off. So thank you for addressing that. One thing you didn't specifically highlight is the Tug McGraw Foundation connection with your, is it the Brain?
The Brain Garden.
The Brain Garden, yeah. And what I wanted to mention, because I've been pretty active with the Pathway Home program up there that's on the Veterans Home property, and I would definitely want to engage, if it's an appropriate partnership. I'm not sure that it is, but because there are some similarities in brain research and brain treatment going on with Pathway and Tug McGraw, if there's a way to partner with that group as well. So I know the McGraw Foundation's brand new up there, and so you're working to coordinate. I think it's great doing it with the children in the garden, but that'd be another opportunity to maybe connect with the Veterans Home. So other than that, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for the suggestion. I'll definitely follow up on that.
Councilmember Chilton?
First of all, thank you for the excellent presentation. Back on the after-school program with, I think, the Healthy Me program, I just want to commend you all for undertaking that. I know that there was a lot of feedback from parents and people in the community about that, and the department, everybody, yourself, Carol, everybody really should get a lot of credit for proactively approaching that rather than being defensive about it and saying, what can we do to make this something positive? And I was really impressed by that. So I do think it has been successful and can continue to be so. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
And Lisa.
Yeah. Team effort.
Item 9, Yountville Elementary School. Discussion regarding town involvement in keeping Yountville Elementary School open.
Briefly, I'll provide a brief introduction and then turn this over to Councilmember Chilton, who is the one that requested the item to be placed. Briefly, as you know, the Napa Valley Unified School District has identified Yountville Elementary School as a small school site. And in the last year or so, they've been dealing with their own budget issues, and the potential closure of small school sites has been on their study list. And we've all previously indicated in council actions and directions that Yountville Elementary School is a very important part of the social fabric of the community, and that we wanted to work towards trying to ensure that it can remain open. And at this point, Councilmember Chilton, I will turn it over. He's written a memo which is included in here outlining some of it, and then there's based on your course of dialogue, when there's some discussion, we'll steer back towards some discussion points. But I think what's been requested in this presentation is for the council to have a discussion, look at potential role involvement, what that involvement might look like, whether that's just political, whether there's financial, other levels of support, and also a request specifically on the part for the establishment of a ad hoc committee. And staff will ask you to spend a little more time in your discussions if you choose to go forward with some of those actions to make sure that there's some clarity and understanding. So with that, I'll turn it over to let Councilmember Chilton provide a little bit more of the meats and the details to some of that, and then listen, and what we're really looking for is some feedback and direction as to how the council might wish to proceed.
Thank you, Steve. I put together this, I wrote this in its entirety, the attachment 1, this memo. I will not sit here and read it, but what it does is give the council, and I've tried to keep the council as up to date as possible in some of the developments with the school. As Steve mentioned, every governmental agency, and the school district is not excluded, has experienced fairly severe budget cuts. I would say that the school district probably as much, if not more, than most. The school district now receives just above $5,000 per student to run the entire school district, which is a really kind of a shockingly low number. Just to give an example on that, my son goes to preschool, Montessori school, and I pay $725 per month for him to go to that. So that works out to $9,000 per year. Imagine running an entire school system on $5,000 per year. So what's happened is the school district, in many ways, got a reprieve last year when the stimulus funding came through. It saved a couple of programs, and that $6 million plug of the budget has all but disappeared now for the next year. And the school district did look at all small schools. It identified 5 schools for potential closure. It has closed 3 of those: Capel, Valley School, Woodland Valley School, and Carneros Elementary. And recently has expressed the desire, they expressed the desire not to close schools, but has expressed the desire with Yountville and Mount George to find other solutions to keep those schools open. And that's a product of many months of discussions with the school district about various options. And I've laid out in this attachment the various scenarios that have been discussed that I know that most of the council is already aware of, one of which was the school district maximizing its savings by closing the school. Another concept that has been explored is converting Yountville to a charter school, which to do that would require fairly significant outside funding to make that school financially feasible. The concept of merging Yountville with Salvador Elementary, which has been somewhat tried in the past. There's been joint administration, was looked at, but that was determined to not be feasible for a variety of reasons. And then a fourth option, which is to keep Yountville School open as is, but address some of the core fundamental problems the school has simply because it's a small school. Yountville has virtually everything that a school should have. It's a high-performing school. It has great community involvement. It's a diverse school, but it's small, so therefore it is, as we all know, we're a small town. You have certain items that just become difficult to sustain, and that's what the district is grappling with, is honestly how to justify to the rest of the district, we're going to keep a small school open, but we're going to take money from other schools to subsidize that school. So those are the options that have been looked at. I obviously don't need to say how I think Yountville School, you look at the aspects of this community, the school, the veterans home, a couple of other items that really make up the fabric of this being a unique and what I always call a real community behind what most people just see as a tourist town, and is something that the council has always fought to preserve. I have realized over the course of the last year that one of the great key advantages that we have as a community is that we are a town, and as other places are either within larger cities or are unincorporated, and therefore the district has had no one to talk to in many ways. And we've been able to plug a little bit of that hole. What I'm asking for tonight is to have a subcommittee set up of the council, 2 members, and that would just allow 2 members to, one is to talk specifically with the school district officials about what I would call a community partnership to look at some of the structural deficit issues, to look at and discuss, and we can discuss it certainly tonight, the town's involvement in that. The town, we just saw the presentation, is heavily involved in the school even today, and provides a great deal of benefit to the school, which I feel confident that the district understands. And the question is whether there's some, even if it's small or large, involvement that the town should have in that. And also, I do want to make it clear, the ultimate goal is to create a community organization, not a town organization, but a community organization that can go out and raise funds, not just to save the school, but also to really make it a better school than it is today. And I say that because, again, the district has $5,000 per student. Next year, if you can possibly imagine, the kindergarten through 2 classes are all going to have 29 students for every teacher as part of the budget cuts. And that kind of takes away from a lot of the benefits that you get from a small local school. So, there's a lot that the community, and I'm speaking of the community as a whole, can hopefully do to, in many ways, return Yountville School to kind of what we all know it to be. And I'm interested in your feedback.
Thank you for that presentation. Does council have any questions for Councilmember Chilton at this time? Councilmember Mueller?
Yeah. Could you give me some update on the Yountville School Foundation? It says in here you submitted an application. Do you have any idea how long it's going to take and what still needed to accomplish that?
Well, I've quit predicting on that one. There's a 2-step application process to actually do a 501(c)(3). C3. Thank you. I always get that wrong. Application goes to the Secretary of State, which has already been applied for. That's supposed to take a month, and has so far taken 3 months. And then you file actual forms with the IRS and I think the Franchise Tax Board. And that includes the governing board and actual documents that would form that. So the first step has already been undertaken, which is procedural, is to be a certified charitable corporation in the state of California. And then the second one is, once that is finalized, to then apply to the taxing authorities for exemption on tax. The intent of that foundation is, and I've put it here, is the foundation is not a reconstitution of the PTA. That's just parents and teachers, and that's the people who are there currently. The idea is to get a longer term involvement. I have, having been involved a lot in this, there's many people who live in this town that are alumni of that school. You go to the Veterans Home and everybody's like, you've got to have a school in the town to make it a town. So the idea is to actually have a community foundation as opposed to just a parent organization that looks at the long-term sustainability of that school and, can deal with situations if something like this were to come up in the future that can proactively attack those kind of situations as opposed to being reactive. Not saying we've been reactive.
I have a couple more questions,
Yeah.
too. I would say, from my knowledge, in the past few years, the Yountville Elementary School PTA has raised about $50,000, give or take, and that happens to be about the number of the deficit here. What has that money gone to in the past that, just in a hypothetical case it was diverted here, would not be supported?
Well, the PTA funds certain activities at the school. For example, a lot of the field trips are paid by the PTA because there aren't school funds to do those. Some of the special events that the school hosts, PTA funds. The biggest item right now is the PTA has paid for a separate librarian at the school rather than that being a shared function. One thing that did occur last year, and it is one reason to set up a foundation, is the PTA did, over the years, I don't want to use the word amass because that sounds huge, but it did come up with a fund balance reserve that was fairly substantive. And one of the issues with that is the PTA, and it's like $75,000 or something of that sort. The state and national PTA has specific rules about creating essentially endowments, going out and raising money but not using it on current kids. So the PTA was essentially forced to spend that funds on items. What they did was good. They replaced 6-year-old computers in the library. But that's one reason that with sort of the fund structure of the PTA and its ability to raise funds is to be able to keep some of that outside of rules from the state and from the national level that say you cannot hold this for other purposes.
And one more question, and I have a feeling you probably have no idea how to answer this. It says that the current deficit is approximately 40 to 50,000. Have you got any sense in the next year, the year after that, the year after that, is this going to be about the same, or could it grow to 2 or 3 times that? Do you have any information there?
Well, one key thing that we've said at the district is don't ever look to the community, and don't look to the town of Yountville as ever thinking that you come up. Steve was talking about water. Don't ever creatively load on costs and think that you can come up with a deficit number that just becomes bigger and bigger. One very important thing, and I won't go into too much detail about it, is the funding structure of schools in California is complex, and that's being common. And what it essentially is you get a percentage of your property tax revenue, and if that doesn't meet a certain minimum, then the state plugs the hole. And what happened is the state's funding has gone down so significantly that Napa Valley School District has basically hit that property tax number. So if it goes beyond that $5,000 per student, then the property tax revenues sort of kick in, and you flip over and you've kind of hit your bottom on.
Okay.
So what you're looking at now is from a funding basis is expanded enrollment, increasing teacher costs, overhead costs, et cetera. I think the district is 92% salary. Is a number I heard last, which is amazing. So then you're back to just general increases. But a very key important item is that number, thanks to that calculation, really will not go much higher, and potentially could go the other way. I'm sure at some point will.
Councilmember Dutton, questions?
Yeah, Louis, just if you, and I know you've been working very closely with the board. I think when we first heard this, the quote B plan, everybody, well, they're going to merge the school here with Salvador and then turn this one into just bring one of the charter schools or the magnet schools up here. I don't know, I'm always worried when they talk that way, and I went to one of the meetings with you, and all of the people stood up and talked to those 3 schools, and you really had a sense of, boy, you're rowing this boat up the river here, you're not going to make it, and I'm not so sure those weren't right. Hopefully this is a different case. What is your feeling now? I mean, is there a true, are they sincere about wanting to keep this open, or are you just getting a lot of lip service, do you think?
Well, 2 things. One is there had always been a statement, especially in private, of, we want to find ways to keep the school open. I think it was very substantive about 6 weeks ago when the board unanimously said that it is our desire to keep it open and we don't want to look at other options. And I think part of that is that there was a lot of hedging on the budget and not knowing where it was going and where is the bottom. And I think there's an understanding the bottom has been achieved. Nobody likes the bottom. The bottom is not a steady state, but at least there's some certainty within that. So to have to go out and make, I think, what they consider to be very undesirable decisions, I think they had to leave that door open. And I think there were some other factors in play with some of those other schools. They were much more inefficient than the 2 other schools that were considered. But I think the district is still concerned about, finding solutions that are fair and equitable for the whole district, but also preserving what are good schools. So I feel very positive. If you asked me 6 weeks ago, I'd have told you something very different.
Follow-up question, the meeting they had about the charter school and what it would take, and in reading, I thought the figure they threw out was about $400 more per student. I see $950 here, and but as I recall, though, there was a real quick time frame there. I mean, you just didn't turn the papers in. It was almost like you had to be out. I think it was 18 months, almost a minimum. On this, I mean, obviously they're saying, hey, we need something by when?
The by when is, the desired is an understanding and a framework for how the next 3 to 5 years will go by the end of June. Now, that's very different than saying you need to have, $200,000 in hand for the next 5 years by the end of June. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is an understanding of this is how it's going to work, this is who's involved, we believe it, and just to put a reasonable plan for them to feel good about the future.
So what kind of a number then are you looking for? Obviously 3 to 5. I mean, what do you think it's going to take annually? Obviously it's more than the 40 or 50, I would assume.
Well, I think that the school needs more than the 40 or 50. The school doesn't need more than 40 or 50 to stay open. So that's almost a two-part question on that. I do know of, a couple of people who privately have said that, one of the reasons we've pursued the foundation is that we're interested in helping the school and preserving a good school, and they want to make donations. And that's something that, is a desire to create that organization that's self-sustaining. But that 40 to 50, and then there's some numbers in there, that needs to, that's the number for the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm going to save general comments until later, and certainly want to hear from the public too, but just a couple questions that I'm not sure you have the answer to, but I'll ask them anyway. The charter school, if I remember correctly, I think the entire council was actually at that one, but wasn't it stated that there's not guaranteed priority enrollment in a charter school situation, so there's no guarantee that all of the local kids would even get in if it was a charter school?
So I'll back up on the charter school, because Councilmember Dutton brought up the $400. That presentation was arranged by the committee who's looking to save the school, and that representative was from the California Charter School Association. He put out the number of $400 per student per year, and one of the key questions that I kept asking is, does that include all the budget cuts that have occurred in the base state funding? And he said, well, that's what our research in the past has shown. So what we did with the district was go back and actually come up with a true number. That number was actually less than I thought it was going to be. I think it was less than the district thought it was going to be, which made the district kind of stand up and go, this could actually happen, which was a fairly substantive event. The issue on the charter school is that $160,000 a year that's in the report. That is a scenario that says, yes, indeed, a charter school can be crafted that has an attendance area that guarantees an attendance. So you could take the current Yountville school attendance area, which essentially is the town of Yountville, to the south part of Oakville, all the way down to Oak Knoll, and then across the valley. That attendance district could be guaranteed to go to Yountville School if they desire, and then you can create open enrollment. The catch was, the charter school gentleman said, if you don't have that home attendance district, then you can apply to the federal government for 3 years of startup funds, and that was $150,000 per year. The key problem with that is, one, kind of defeats the purpose of a community-based school, because open enrollment can come from anywhere, or you're gambling that enough students here could go. And secondarily, it does not create a situation where the school is stable for the long term, because to be approved, you have to show a 5-year business plan with a reasonable funding, and 3 years from the federal government is not a 5-year plan. So that was that trade-off. So this $160,000 per year, $950 per student per year, is what you would need to have a Yountville school with a Yountville attendance district.
And that would all need to be generated by basically the parents in the community to keep it viable.
Correct.
And one of the things that I know you share the frustration, as have I when I've attended several of the meetings with you, is the inability to really get targeted dollar amounts and targeted analysis. Have you heard in any of the additional conversations you've had if they've really earmarked things like the cost to the district of transportation, if in fact, like, is still merging Yountville with Salvador all that viable because they have to add in brand-new transportation costs? But when we ask what are those transportation costs, they haven't really had a figure. I'm wondering if maybe you've heard a figure. And then to that point, how can we really trust the $40,000 to $50,000 figure if they're not all that confident about their numbers, and certainly the flexibility that's built in by the state potentially not providing what they say today they're going to provide? No guarantee tomorrow that that money is still there.
Right. I'll answer the several questions there. First of all, that was the main issue with merging Yountville and Salvador, is it didn't save any money at all. And not only did it not save any money at all, it put the Salvador Elementary Magnet Grant application at risk, because one, they've got an application into the state and federal government for additional funds to support the magnet school. It would change the demographic profile of that school. It would change the facts on the ground for that school. And they basically were told that if you do that, you basically change your application and you'll lose out on this cycle. So A, it costs the same, if not more, to do so because of transportation, and the state, the district will lose up to $1 million in grant funding. So that was looked at and then taken off pretty quickly. In that closing the school section of the $300,000, the district is going to save about $350,000 to $375,000 a year by closing Carnero School. And the big difference has to do with transportation. There are 90 students or so that live in Yountville that go to Yountville School. The rest live in Napa, so they would not have to transport those kids to a different school. Carneros was made up of almost entirely students from other districts whose school was full that were bused in. So that transportation number was factored in. We were talking about the budget earlier today, and somebody, I don't know, maybe you made a comment about trying to get numbers. I've always been pleased by the budget presentation of this town because it generally makes sense as it does in the real world. When you go and look at the budgets of the school district, some of these other agencies, they don't even talk the same language. It's really kind of shocking. And they don't look at it on a per school site in the same way of what's this one making. So one of the things that we've said is I've got their estimation in the P&L of where this $40,000 to $50,000 number comes from, and this is not going to be a moving target. We're not going to change this every year. We're going to say, you know what, we're going to raise money, and we're going to raise money for these specific items at Yountville Elementary, and we're not going to negotiate next year that you now have a $55,000 deficit or you want to come up with one. So because of that uncertainty of the way the budgeting is done, they don't look at the budgeting on a per site basis normally. I don't know why. So that's one of the things we've said is we can't have these floating numbers.
But the trick is, say we try to adopt this concept of filling this gap, and the number, say it's $50,000, and they know that's our limit, and then that limit changes to $70,000,
Right.
and there's nobody there to fill that $20,000, then all of that effort may go for naught, and they decide to close the school anyway.
Well, that's my point is that number needs to not change, and we need to have an agreement that's different than that.
Okay. I'll save the rest of my comments for the end of the discussion.
That's it. I mean, you make an excellent point.
I have a question on, have you been advised, Louis, as to, one of the questions we've always wrestled a little bit with, is this school maximizing the attendance that it could have to create AVA?
Absolutely not.
And what kind of commitment has the district been to allow us to potentially look at efforts to do that? And also, what might happen if, as we anticipate, we will see some increase in children as a result of the two affordable housing? I don't know that I'm comfortable in saying 45 kids will arrive on day one.
No.
But I certainly think, since we have, several family units that we're opening, that we are going to see some children. And how would that get factored in, assuming that that's new population coming in?
Attachment 2, just as a note, has a short presentation that was given to the school board. And one of the things that we highlighted specifically had to do with the town's commitment to affordable housing. Because one of the perceptions that does exist is that, Yountville back in the old days had all these kids, which I would question the truth behind that, but had this huge school, and now it's been shrinking, and we're feeding it with Napa students. And in fact, most of the school board expressed that they've been very impressed with the fact that Yountville has actually taken the steps to build affordable housing to keep that demographic mix in place. So I consider that to be probably the second most important thing that the district considered when looking at this school was, what's the future of this community? And I thought that was really good. We have talked with them about the fact that right now there are 2 open classrooms, and if this school has generally had to pull students from Napa to fill a classroom. Historically, has always been way oversubscribed on the number of students who attempt to open enroll up here, whose parents are willing to drive them up here, or they work here, or they work up Valley. And they've limited that. So one of the statements that we have made is, as part of the whole feasibility for the school in the future is, if we have 2 more classrooms, because we have them, then that reduces the overhead part of a small school. And that absolutely should be and will be part of the discussion. And another part of the discussion that has happened is the concept, it says in the staff report K through 6, but it's K through 5. In the old days, it was K through 6. And then you go back far enough, is the concept of a K through 8 school here. That concept has been floated, and it was certainly floated in the charter school concept of there's some space, it could be done if the district wants to make that feasible. So opening that up is something that we've talked about, and saying we'll go out there and recruit students because we want to make sure people know that there is space and this is a great school.
It doesn't sound like you have to recruit them, though, if they're turning kids away.
No, but I'm not sure what the perception is of why it is that they do that. There's a lot of benefits to the district of having kids open enroll in many ways because they reduce busing costs and et cetera. So part of it is they just do the numbers and try to keep kids as close to home as possible, and I don't fully understand it.
Well, I know it. I was talking yesterday to Edna Williams, who runs the preschool, and I said, she's got 18 or 19. I said, how many of them? She says, they're all the parents work here.
Right.
And I said, granted, a lot of them are in town here.
Yeah.
They're in town, but I mean, I can't believe that they couldn't fill those 2 classrooms if they wanted to, especially with the results of the school and everything.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this presentation this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Donna Hine, Gateway Mobile Home Park, which won't be mobile very long. We have a new name coming up, so I just wanted to throw that in. I have several things to say, and if you're going to limit me, tell me now. I would like to respond to one of your comments, Bill, about classroom open enrollment and classroom size. One of the problems that occurs is that they build enrollment on projected class sizes. In other words, if you think you're only going to have 20 kindergartners, then you're not going to, you're going to look for more. But if you're not going to have that many, then you're not going to be looking for more kids in kindergarten. So it's based on projections. As far as the budget, Marjorie, that is the most miserable subject that you can get into. I've spent hours in meetings about budgets with the school district and where the money is coming from, and they are at the bottom of the well.
Excuse me, Donna, can you try to pull the mic? He might be trying to adjust the sound in the back.
Is that,
Try that.
is that better? Napa Unified is what is called a low-wealth school district. We only get $5,000 per student in Napa. In St. Helena, Calistoga, because they are high wealth, because they have more property value with their vineyards, they have a per pupil expenditure of, let's say, $6,000 or $7,000 per pupil, which is obviously not an equal funding. That has been a problem in the state for a long time, even with Proposition 13, which also created tremendous problems in finance for school districts and the beginning of the cuts of enrichment programs and everything else. I can't say enough about how important I think it is for this council to make a commitment to help with the financing of this school. We have been allowed this school to be open only for 1 year at this point. They've only said the school year 2011 and 12. We don't know what's going to happen beyond that. And the state budget being what it is, and I don't know how much the state budget will improve, but I think that we can safely say that we're going to need help for at least 5 years. Whether the town can provide or should provide, I don't want to say should, you should, but whether you need to provide all of that is what will be the result of the kind of contract or agreement that you can come up with the Unified District and the committee that I hope you will form here. We need to guarantee our children the best education possible. That's what a parent does. The school is our community. We represent those children. They're our children. We can't afford to have mediocre education. If we have mediocre education, we have young people who can't make decisions, who can't rationalize, and who are unprepared to be functioning adults in society. We don't have enrichment programs in our schools anymore. We have to provide those. That's some of the money that the PTA provides now. Unfortunately, you won't be able to look to the PTA for funding to help the school open. That's not their function. They're not able to do that. They can provide some supplemental things, but that's all. It's a very touchy issue with me because I just know what the district is going through. They can't give you an answer practically until after the budget has been approved by the state, and God knows when that will happen again this year. When did we get a budget this year? In August? But you can't wait until then. You have to be prepared. I'd like to see, I think Louis is being very polite and very, very nice, and I'd like to see you look at more than what he's talking about, money-wise. I'd like to see you look at something like $100,000 to begin with, whether that comes from the town or whether it's part of the 501c3 or a joint effort. I'd like to propose, and I know nobody will like this, but if I had come to your budget meeting today, I would have asked you to look at least 1.5% or 2% of your TOT. And that would be a commitment for a couple of years, which would, not a long-term, but a short-term commitment. that would get us over this hump. The district is going to be, how do I want to put this? The district is not going to turn away or turn down any opportunity to further or to keep this school open or to keep this school within the district. They're not going to turn down anything in that regard. They will work with us. They will help us. I'm going to be off the record. John Glazer, children went to school here. He's our superintendent. Unfortunately, he will be leaving, but he has an investment in this community because he lived here and his children went to school here. Dorothy Barboza, who is, who is a native practically, she has an investment here. Her children went to school here. Dorothy was on the school board here. But aside, and that's now back on the record if you want. But I would like to see this committee formed. I want to see a contract. I'd like to see you develop a contract that will be reviewed annually with the school district, that will put you in a position, a very positive position, and something that I think is unique here in that this school could very easily, as Louis said, become a K-8 school. And if with that option, there are many children who aren't ready to leave to go to middle school. But if it was a K-8 school, they could stay here. And it would bring, I think, additional enrollment because there are many people who don't want their children going to middle school. They're not comfortable with it. When Louis mentioned class size, the class sizes in Yountville next year will increase because of funding. You'll have at least 29 or 30 students in kindergarten through 3. You'll have anywhere from 33 to 35 in grades 4th and 5th. And the students who come after that, there is no more room at Redwood Middle School. Some of our children in the future will have to be bused. If you had a long-range plan, a K-8 situation, a K-8 program, it would be a perfect answer. And as Louis has said, we have a wonderful record. We've met the state needs and requirements as far as workforce housing. We have those additional students. No, we're not going to have 50 students this year, but eventually we will have 30, 40 kids coming in. And we have people who work here and live outside of Napa, who will want to bring their children here. We can make this the best school in the valley. That's not to say that it isn't already, but we'll make it the really best school in the valley. We'll be able to provide every student in that school with a computer. They don't have computers for every student now. We'll be able to do things that will enhance their education to a degree that people will be clamoring to get in here. I please guarantee you. I love this little school. I don't have anybody in the school, but I'll tell you this. My name is on a plaque in that school. And so help me God. As long as my name is on that plaque, you're not going to close the school. You'll have to trample over me some way or another. And I'm not joking, but I am joking. But seriously, make a commitment. Keep that school open. Make it the pride of the community. You saw that wonderful presentation by the Recreation Department. Almost everything there was the kids and what was happening with the kids and what the kids were doing here and how the two joined. And keep it up. Just don't fail us. And I could tell you about midnight meetings where the midnight oil was burned and we were battling the Taxpayers Association. We hated every cut that we made. It was our blood because we didn't become school board members to cut. We became school board members to add, to give the best. And when we had to ask parents to do things like provide the instruments, provide the uniforms, And then along came, I'm diverging because I get so upset about this thing, the misunderstanding with the public about the lottery. For every dollar that the lottery provides to the school district, they take away $1 that is mandated by the state to go to the school districts. The school districts are supposed to be the first priority of the state budget. They are the last priority. We need to make our students here our first priority. Every one of you here need to make that commitment. And I'll quit. But if you want to ask me a question, I'll answer anything that I can. 12 years on the school board, 12 years of budgets, and I want you to know that when I spoke the other day to the financial office, and I know it's not a final figure, but the figure that day was $850,000 it cost the district to run the school. That's a big figure. And you know what comes out of that? That's teacher salaries, that's retirement, that's busing, that's everything. I don't expect you to get that kind of money, but let's start. And let's make a commitment at least for 3 to 5 years. And by then, the state should be in a better position. And who knows, I may be dead by then and you won't have to worry about me. But anyway, please, I am for you. I can't say more. It's my blood and sweat in that school, every school in the district. I was the subject of a recall because we tried to close Capel and Lynn Valley at that time. Fortunately, we didn't close the school and we survived the recall. But school closures are very emotional, as you know, because you sat in the meeting, you heard about closing Carneros. And Capel and Woodin Valley. Imagine those children from Capel and Woodin Valley being bused into Vichy. That's an hour-and-a-half bus ride, twice a day. Kindergartners. We don't want that to happen to our children here. Not in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to see them bused even to Salvador. That's tough. So I'll quit. Honest, I will.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Rob Winterberg, Yountville resident. Just wanted to bring up one point was when we were doing the strategic planning meeting, I was involved with one of the ones as a zoning design review board member. One of the things that came up for a lot of people, there were 5 of us there, or 6 of us or something, was family. Everybody really wanted this to be more of a family town and to maintain some of that feel. I remember one person actually saying, they'd really like their community in 5 years from now to look more like a family. That requires kids. That requires a school. And so I just want to also support that. I don't quite have the passion, and I appreciate the passion, but I just want to point out that people are thinking 5 years down the road about this, and I think it's really important. So I want to put my support out there, too.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sharon Stensis, 1 Staggs View Lane. Since I spent most of the afternoon with you and I didn't get a word in edgewise, I thought I would now. I totally agree with what Donna and Rob said. I want to second that. I want to thank the council for being so involved in this, that they have taken so much of their time and attention already to get a handle on it, and I think the community should be very proud of that. I also want to remind you that the school here is a deeper part of the fabric than the town government by about 100 years. And I know it's not your responsibility to fund education, and I'm not asking you to do that tonight, but I really would like you to form this committee and to find a way to raise this money. And I kind of think there should be a 2-pronged strategy. One is to get us through saving the school, and then 2 is to go through all the options available to see how we can make it a viable school for at least 10 or 20 years, way past the time that we'll be in this building. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Dave? Okay. Seeing no further public comment, I'll close the public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion. Councilmember
can-
Mueller? Well,
I was just gonna-
well,
I wanted to steer you towards the recommendation section where I
Right.
laid out some alternatives. One is obviously you're in the stage 2, which is to provide feedback and input. And I think in listening, what's really important is there's 2 elements to the consideration that's really been raised. One is some level of creation of an ad hoc committee to review what type of a community partnership structure might exist, and then how to define that going forward. And then we've entered that kind of in and out of that slippery slope of funding, with funding being community partnership funding, and then occasionally funding being town write a check. And those are 2 distinctly different things, and I think the council needs to have some discussion on that in terms of that direction, because as was alluded by several of the speakers, it's not, the town has a real interest. There's no doubt, and I've written it in the staff report, that a community school is part of the heart soul. But when we get into providing taxpayer funds earmarked for another purpose, we really have to be really careful. And it may be that we need to find something in the middle, but you guys are really going to have some good, thoughtful discussion and engage the community, certainly in trying to understand what a contract or an obligation. And certainly there's a role for the community or the town to be in developing that. But I do want to, especially because if Donna was at our earlier workshop, she'd know that you guys are sitting on 125,000 the negative right now. So, something to the tune of 100,000, not including the water subsidy, is very challenging. But I think having the framework for discussing what that partnership would look like, and I think everybody having to revisit some of the potential principles and approaches is very necessary, because clearly not having the elementary school will be very, very difficult to envision. So with that, we've kind of outlined a little bit of discussion on, one, what parameters might you think, what are the roles, and what are the outcome that you're looking for out of this potential ad hoc committee, and are you looking for something actually that initially is larger than an ad hoc committee, and you're going to have an ad hoc supplemented with other community members, because as you know, we utilize 2 approaches. There's the ad hoc, where it's simply 2 council members working with staff to kind of develop a recommendation, and more like the approach we did with the heritage tree, where there was a wider citizen. But at some point, I just think we need a clear understanding of what the parameters and how much staff time and resources you're prepared to allocate to this particular outcome.
give it, certainly.
Well, just to follow up on that, there's, sometimes you feel like you have closed session when you're doing contract negotiations for a reason. I think there have been many excellent questions asked tonight, and there's a couple of items that are out there that I think Sharon made a really good point, which is it's almost a 2-step process, and there's a couple of things that are out there financially that I think are in our favor that makes this $40,000 to $50,000 pretty achievable, and so I think that's one of the reasons I would like to see a subcommittee, so that can be discussed and vetted out, and some of these issues can be discussed with town staff. I don't think it's necessary nor I think it's desirable, especially considering the time of year it is. Town staff, I don't think should drive this process. I don't think that's necessary. I think what I would like to have is that ability for a discussion to be had, and with town staff to look at some creative ideas and do things that certainly is in the best interest of the community and of the town, because we have both of those at heart. So I very much agree with that. And again, there's a couple of things that I almost feel like are in the back pocket that I don't want to say.
Your thoughts, Councilmember Mueller?
I definitely think, there's probably not one person in this town that doesn't want to save and really appreciates that school. So I think, putting some time and effort into doing that is extremely important for us. The ad hoc committee, so I kind of wrote down, I think, without a doubt we should form that, but I definitely want to get a real sense of what we're really talking about here. And I understand that, just maybe correct me if I'm wrong, so if we have this ad hoc committee, we will actually kind of map out a bit of a business plan, if you will, how we're going to come up with, this is target $50,000 over the next 3 to 5 years, and it needs to be done by the end of June. And that's what this ad hoc committee will do, and be at least 2 council members, and not more. And then the other people, I would imagine, would come from, who've also been very involved in trying to save the school already, some people who will kind of help construct this plan. So that's what we'll do. And in addition to that, the plan will be to, actually is the business plan is what the county is looking for, right? How will you, the district, okay. So, so that's pretty much what we're going to do. So, and in terms of the town involvement, that's what I'm trying to, is the town, the 2 council members? What else is the town? I mean, because even though you're not an official 501(c)(3) yet, you can still meet in the community hall, so there's space, you can meet here. So meeting isn't really going to be a problem. Maybe the town could make phone calls or send out emails. So the town involvement, that's a piece I'm trying to really understand.
So
it's not staff, we all just shook our heads, so
Right.
what is that exactly?
I think the town involvement, number one, is a leadership statement. It's
Okay.
a statement by this council to the district that, yes, we are serious, and you've made a statement, and we're going to make a statement back to you. So that's the leadership, arguably the most important. The second one is, I think that we should, as a a potential subcommittee, should look and say, here are the different ranges of options. You can go from 2% to TOT. I'm not going to suggest that. But what are some ways that the town could be involved? If it's partnership-wise with programs, if it's financially, what would that look like? And then bring that back to the council and say, do you want that or not? So that would be one thing that I think we would typically look at staff and say, come back
Or
with
perhaps the
alternatives.
town would be willing to underwrite a one-time minimal deficit, or
Right.
any of those
Exactly.
long laundry lists. Okay, I understand that now.
Sure.
So, but then, so this is all going to have to get put together, because you're going to have to come back and discuss it again before the end of June. So time is certainly of the essence here. Yeah. And there's no doubt that we've all just sat through the budget, that there's more people in the wagon than there are pulling the wagon right now. So that's going to be, it's just reality. I would love to get 2% of the TOT, but, we got to keep the toilets flushed, and we got to keep the cops walking around, and we just don't have any choice there. So, I think we are going to be smart and creative, and I think that'll be a good thing. So then, and then part of this too will be the Yountville Elementary, the Yountville School Foundation will be the entity that just holds the dollars, or will it be part of the entity that is kind of part of this
I think
business plan?
the
Or
answer is
it's a separate,
that's
it's
it.
a funding mechanism?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think, forming the ad hoc committee and really talking about these things is what we need to do. Getting the input from, right now, from what at least I've read in the paper, we have no commitment one way or the other from the Yountville Elementary School PTA. So that'll be they'll be coming to the table too, to kind of talk about what they can do there, and bringing, I guess, we'll have time to bring in these other Yountville nonprofit groups and talk to all of them. Okay. I think that I kind of understand that structure, and it seems to make sense, and I think we need to start on that tomorrow, pretty much.
Councilmember Dutton?
Well, I fully agree with that. I think you have to have an ad hoc committee. I think based on the time frame, and it's certainly quick, I would caution against getting too many chefs in the kitchen. I think it could just bog it down. I think you have to get the key players. I do agree, deep down, I don't think anybody would like to see the school closed. They may complain about this or that, but, you know, it's almost like one of the things you can't afford not to keep it open. You know, I mean, really, what it comes down to is, Rob said, you want to really create nothing, then just close it and you won't have any families left. I mean, who would move to a town where there's no school for their kids or anything like that? I think on the plus side is that if it gives us the opportunity, and not tomorrow, but down the road, to get this back to a K through 8, that to me would be the coup of all coups. Then all of a sudden you would really have, to my mind, a real shiny light. But I do say you have to get going on it. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I do think, obviously, as far as the committee, Louis, I mean, you're leading the charge, so I think obviously you would be one of the persons, and whoever else would want to get involved with it. Not the old geezers. I think somebody that has a little more closer to it. Seriously, but anyway.
Not to me.
But in any event, I do think it's very important. But time is flying, and as Marjorie said, you're right. You probably wouldn't hurt to get started tomorrow on it, really, because I just hope they're sincere, though, and I mean, I don't want you to go through all the work and then, geez, yeah, it's really nice, but.
We're going to close it anyway.
Okay, hopefully, but from everything you've told me, they're not leading you down the path, so that's good.
I don't believe so. is what I'm
Good.
saying.
Well, that's fine. I'll take your word for that for sure.
Vice Mayor.
Well, I first want to remind folks of the letter that I drafted with Councilmember Chilton that we all signed in support of this effort. It was, I thought, very genuinely and very well received by the school board and the superintendent. And that, I think, really set a tone that they have appreciated. Unless they're extremely good actors, Bill, I believe that they are completely motivated. We've been to a few meetings together, and Louis has had more conversations than I, but I believe that they find this as an extreme relief that our community is as behind this effort as we are. I also think they have taken, been aware and appreciate the fact that they're hearing a logical, structured plan. Sitting through some of those meetings, it's heart-wrenching having to listen to parents that are losing their children's school. It's a very emotional thing. I mean, you hear it from Donna, and she still feels that emotional attachment years after her involvement. And so it can be difficult to keep this a pointed, targeted conversation. I think to what Councilmember Dutton was saying, having too many people involved would be detrimental, given especially the very tight time frame we're talking about. So I would not necessarily encourage, getting a bunch of parents or other folks involved. I think we've been pretty effective with dialogue to this point, and I think we should continue that way. They definitely, 2 or 3 at least of the board members mentioned specifically when we talked about our commitment to affordable housing and having families in town, they cited that as, a show of our commitment. And so they obviously take those issues very seriously. So my biggest concern is that this is a moving target and that they start to rely on, Yountville stepped up last year. We're in trouble this year. Let's see what their threshold really is. And so very specific, pointed, controlled language that limits what exposure, whatever the entity is. I certainly would advocate that we find some private partnerships that I think are out there. I mean, if you attend the Red and White affairs, I know that's PTA money and it can't be used specifically for what we're talking about, but that shows the kind of support. Those aren't just parents. There are a lot of us that go to that and support the school that are just there because it's part of our community. And I think you've heard it from multiple council members tonight. So I think it's a no-brainer to continue the dialogue and have, I would suggest an ad hoc committee of just council members, at least to get terms established that we could then reach out to the community and say, okay, folks, look, this is our situation with the budget. We may or may not be able to support any of this financially. It's time for everybody to step forward and make it happen. So, and I think that will be received positively.
I agree, John, and I agree with everything you said. I think the key is public-private partnerships. I think the town can take a leadership role, but it's going to hinge on those relationships with this newly formed organization, with the a select few representatives from the PTA, and to continue that dialogue, and especially with this district. I can certainly support the development of an ad hoc committee and the town taking a leadership role. And I think it's important that ad hoc committee reach out to these other private entities and talk about their involvement, and especially financial involvement. So in terms of the town staff's time and involvement, we're at a time right now where it's going to be very, very difficult, especially under crunch time, for us to get our budget approved and passed, for staff to dedicate much time to this. So I would support the appointment of an ad hoc committee and ensure that ad hoc committee does have the support of the town in terms of what you need from the town in terms of that commitment. So, the next step, can we get somebody interested in serving on the ad hoc committee?
I'd be open to it, and I think Lewis is a automatic.
I'm stuck with it, so.
Well, then, and I would move that we appoint Lewis and Vice Mayor Dunbar to the ad hoc committee representing the town's interest in preserving Yountville Elementary School, and coming up with a plan to present to the district, and bringing it back to council so that we can provide our input. And one of the things in your letter, Lewis, that was occurred to me that I felt was really important is there are several options on the table, and I'd like to hear the PTA representatives' concerns if any of these options are taking are a preference at this point. Charter school versus as is. I mean, obviously as is would be great, but then we're talking about some significant funding as well as the charter school, and we're talking about processing and paperwork. And I'm anxious to hear about the status of your Yountville School Foundation, because it would certainly be a lot easier to work with a non-501c3 than it would, going directly to the taxpayers looking for funding. So,
If I could just make a comment, and I agree that we're going to really need to tackle this kind of on our own and not try to stretch staff any thinner. But what I would like is to get staff. I think, and it was talked about tonight, that presentation tonight from the Parks and Community Services staff, I think really plays right into what we're going to talk about. So I would like to get that either PowerPoint presentation or print out. That almost goes without making any adjustments,
right,
as an additional attachment to what we're going to be wanting to present.
It was a great presentation.
Okay. So, oh yeah,
I'll second that motion by the mayor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries. We've established our ad hoc committee, and we've set some parameters and goals for this group, and hopefully we can come up with a plan in the next several weeks.
Thank you.
Item 10, Yountville Art Walk.
Thank you, Mayor Council. It's with great pleasure that I share with you the initial success of another citizen investment in our community, and that's the product of the Arts Committee, which is a committee of our Parks and Recreation Services Commission. And we have officially launched the Yountville Art Walk, which you approved approximately 6 months ago. The first installation, and Michelle can kind of go forward. This is the first installation of 4 pieces on loan from Napa Valley artist Gordon Huther. This is Orange Squares. This is Orange Squares in a slightly different vision.
That's smaller.
And there's a little bit of scale as how it relates. I also want to give photo credit to local photographer Michael Shear, and he's granted the town permission to use his photography on our website to promote this, and also has a really great piece we're going to surprise you with at the end that will be gracing the cover of our budget. Anyway, so this is Orange Squares. This is Red Keller. All of these particular pieces, this is adjacent to Petit Logis. As you may remember, our Yountville Art Walk program is actually a public-private partnership. The town is providing the insurance coverage and doing a lot of the structure work and the program element, but we are trying to include private property partnerships as well as public sites with the goal of providing public outdoor sculpture art from Veterans Memorial Park in the south to Yountville Community Park in the north. And the project is launched with 2 private property sites. Here's Petit Logis on the Washington Street side of their property. This is Reflections. Reflections is a multimedia piece with glass. This is located on the grassy knoll at the Villaggio at the intersection of Mulberry and Washington. Again, as part of their participation, Villaggio has provided at their expense the pad and the lighting necessary to support this. Again, the town is providing installation support, marketing, and working with the Arts Committee and the insurance coverage. This is Silver Twist. Somebody suggested that it be renamed in honor of the hockey season, Silver Fin, in honor of the San Jose Sharks as they move forward. This is a metal and it's a fancy glass. Yeah, thank you. And it changes in colors and prism. Just a fantastic piece, very modern and a little bit in contrast, but yet complements the architecture of the facility. And if I could just go back, we actually sneaked in a couple more there. That's the piece that we are really excited about. That is just a incredible picture, and again, our compliments to Michael Shear for providing that. That really puts in perspective the history of Yountville with the Founders Rock, the square, the community hall, and the community center and library, and the combination. So again, this is just a photo introduction to the full council of the installation and to the community. We do have, the Arts Committee has a little bit of finishing work with regard to art information tags that will be installed, and there will be a artist reception, meet and greet with an opportunity to meet with the artists, and that date is June 3rd, a Thursday, 6 to 8-ish, and there'll be more information coming. But again, what I really want to stress is this is a product of citizen input, a lot of volunteers on the part of the Arts Committee. Judith Caldwell's the chair, Rob Winterberg, Kim, and I'm a little fuzzy on, and Rhonda with Raz Glass. We've got, and John sits on that as well. There's a great need, and other people coming and going, but this is really a product of people saying, we want to roll up our sleeves and do something, and we give them a little bit of structure and a little bit of rope, and they've done some outstanding stuff.
Thank you. Nice presentation. Are there any other informational reports? Staff?
No.
Good. Item 11, council member meetings, reports, and comments. Flood control did not meet today. WIC?
The last Thursday in May.
Okay. Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Dunbar, League of California Cities North Bay Division.
Thank you. I just wanted to pass along my public thanks and congratulations to Cantonetta Piero up at Hotel Luca for really coming through and supporting us. We were the host city for the North Bay Division of the League's, their general membership dinner meeting. And if anybody remembers the evening that we had this about a week ago, it went from beautiful sun to beautiful sun everywhere but except above Yountville about 15 minutes before our dinner started, and the rain started pouring down on our indoor-outdoor seating arrangement. They were phenomenal. They reset the whole 60-person setup 3 times, and then we went right back to the way it was in the first place once the rain went away. Meanwhile, they were hosting a chef from Naples, Florida, doing a special pizza menu for the week. They were phenomenal. We had great attendance from all over the North Bay Division, and so the presentation was shared by our own Assistant Town Attorney, Matt Gorman, who did a great job, along with another private attorney, discussing a topic we've really been quickly trying to educate ourselves on, and that's medical marijuana and dispensaries and the ballot initiative that's on the November ballot as it relates to the legality of marijuana. So it was informative and timely. There were a lot of folks that had some good questions, and so appreciate Matt and all the staff that were there. So thanks for making that a successful event. If I may, while I still have the microphone, I won't give it back to you quite yet, if I may. I also attended, along with Councilmember Dutton, the 7th Pathway Home graduation. Pathway Home is the residential treatment program that is up at the Veterans Home, but it's a private nonprofit organization that treats young Iraq and Afghan veterans that have combat stress, post-traumatic stress injuries and challenges. And it's always an incredibly emotional and moving event. It was held at Silverado Country Club. I spoke there on behalf of a volunteer advisory council that I'm now chairing with several members of our community to try to help them with their organizational structure as they move forward treating the young veterans. The last thing I'll say about that is June 20th. I've mentioned this before, but the Wounded Warriors organization is holding a polo match, a sanctioned USA polo match in Santa Rosa on June 20th as a fundraiser. Part of the proceeds, I think half the proceeds, are going to the Pathway Home program. So if anyone is interested and available, especially being Father's Day, it might be an opportunity to get those fathers out there for the polo match. But anyway, it's a very worthwhile program, and I'm happy to support it.
Good comments, and thank you for reporting on the Pathway Home program. Yountville community is supporting that polo match on Father's Day, and Bob Hurley will be the featured chef, and there will be a lot of participation from Yountville businesses, and hopefully a lot of Yountville citizens will go out and show their support. Any other council reports or comments? Councilmember Dutton?
Well, just one, I want to remind everybody, a week from Saturday is the annual cleanup day. So we talked a little bit earlier today, but get all your junk out there on the 15th after you can't sell it this Saturday. I guess they have the yard sale. So on 15th, and take the opportunity to take advantage of it, because we may not be doing it next year.
Councilmember Chilton?
NCTPA is not on the list. I don't know why, but that's okay. We had our meeting 2 weeks ago or so. The most substantive item was approving the agency's new fiscal year budget. It's an approximately $18 million budget. NCTPA seems to be in better shape than a lot of Bay Area transit organizations, which are in disastrous shape, but I think part of that has to do with the outsourced arrangement that we have with our transit with Veolia and the cost containment that's been achieved there, as opposed to the typical benefits and employee creep that everybody else seems to have. So the trolley, Yountville trolley, is approved for another year. We saw that fare box contribution in our budget today. Most of the funding, at least, is believed that it's going to continue to be available for next year. One of the good things, though, is when budgets are tight, people review what they're doing. So there are a couple of routes, the Calistoga to Santa Rosa route, which was saved from the block about 6 months ago with some money from Calistoga and St. Helena. That route continues to perform. I don't know what the word Jack used was, but it was terrible or something more colorful than that. But it looks like at the end of this year, end of this fiscal year, that route will probably be canceled. And as well, there's a Flex Ride program in Napa that operates, particularly at Napa Valley College, after hours when normal bus service is gone. The ridership on that is also dreadful. And one of the concerns is that federal transit funds require the agency to recover at least 10% of its expenditures in the fare box. We contribute that here in Yountville, but that has to come from rider payments or contributions. And so these routes that are highly unprofitable are basically being subsidized by other routes, and it's putting federal transit funds in jeopardy. So that's one of the reasons that's happening. There was also a discussion which kind of got shelved, I think, because it got a little negative on the Arts Commission that is underneath NCTPA. There was that commission doesn't have funding, never has had funding, and has had some issues with its purpose in the world. And of course, now in this poor budget year, there's been a request for funding, which was met with some hostility by some of the representatives. So we'll see how that all plays out, but I'm sure we'll be having a discussion about the Arts Commission as well. That is separate from the Arts Council. That's a completely separate organization. And you said the 8th is the town yard sale this coming Saturday.
Town yard sale.
I'd appreciate if everybody at 2 o'clock on Saturday would avoid having a fire, because we're having my son's 5th birthday at the firehouse, which we purchased at the Red and White fundraiser. So please, no fires at 2 o'clock on Saturday. Thank you.
Speaking of birthdays, town planner just handed me a note that today is George Yount's birthday. He was born May 4th, 1794. So we'll refrain from singing happy birthday. But townwide yard sale, Saturday, the 8th. The 15th is the townwide cleanup day. And I'd just like to mention that the Chamber of Commerce, in conjunction with the town and Upper Valley Waste Management, is conducting with respect to all of our food processors in town, a seminar on food waste composting. And they'll be doing a little demonstration and making a presentation to our food producers in town on, I believe it's Tuesday, the 11th, at 9 a.m. So it should prove to be interesting. We certainly have a resource here in town for feeding the food waste composting machine. Any more council reports or comments? Okay, future agenda items. Town Council Budget Work Session, May 18th, between 1 and 5 p.m., just like we took part one of that today. And we'll be discussing the dog park process update. And with that, I would suggest that item 13, do we have a need for closed session?
Very briefly.
Then we shall adjourn to closed session.